Kip, what's up, man? Great to see you today.
Good to see you. You had a great weekend. And then I also saw a post, and one of the questions today from this Facebook group was about this as well. And so I might as well just dive into it.
Yeah.
And maybe you can't disclose. So what's the deal with the FBI?
Yeah. So this actually didn't happen recently. And I didn't try to be misleading. I could see how maybe it came across as misleading.
Okay, because I swear
Yeah.
this has happened before. Okay,
It happened.
So this is
It happened right as I think I was talking with my wife. It was right before, I think it might have been the weekend before the inauguration. And so that was probably after January 6th, because inauguration is what, the 21st or 22nd, somewhere right in there. So it was in that window that I was gone on a business trip. Now, I didn't go to January 6th. I didn't participate in that. It never sounded like a good idea. My wife, I remember, had mentioned like, hey, there's going to be marching and this and that in DC on January 6th. You should go to that. And I was like, no, I'm not going to that. And she's like, why not? I said, what am I going to do? Just march around with a bunch of idiots and not get anything done? Like, that sounds like such a waste of time. And she's like, no, you should go. Like, other people will be there. And I'm like, no, I have other things. I'm just not interested. And I didn't go. And then after everything went down on January 6th, she was like, I am so glad that you didn't go do that. And I said, well, I didn't know any of that was going to take place, but clearly there was a little foresight there where I'm like, I'm not doing that. Anyways, I'm on a business trip, and as I'm away on our security cameras, an alert comes up, and I just casually glance at it. And I see that there's two individuals that I don't recognize, a male and a female, at my house. So my wife was gone. I was gone. My wife was gone. She was in town, but she was at home with the kids, but they were on an errand or something. And I call her up and I said, who was at the door? Who was that? And she said, I don't know. I have a card here from the FBI. And I still have the card. I kept it. And on the back of the card, it says something like, we have questions for you. Please call. Something like that. I'd have to look at it. I don't exactly remember what it says. So I'm freaked out. I'm like, what in the world? So I call the office or whatever and ask for the agent, and I talk with them. And it's really hard to explain what you feel in that moment, because you haven't done anything wrong, and yet you're racking your brain on what in the world the FBI could be visiting you about, especially when you talk about some of the subjects I talk about, especially as it was after January 6th. Which I think maybe by default, you might assume that I would be lumped into that crowd. I'm not, but you might assume that if you didn't know anything else about me. And then we had a new president that I was outspoken against, right? So there's like a lot going in my mind right now. I'm like, what in the world? And he didn't disclose a whole lot of information other than there was an investigation. And I was racking my brain on like an investigation on me, an investigation on somebody else, whatever. So long story short, it sounds like somebody in one of our groups, just based on the conversation and the direction of the conversation it went. I'm having a hard time illustrating the story succinctly because it was so strange. And there's so many gaps that I have to fill in because they would not disclose information with me. But it sounds like somebody had made a statement that another person didn't like, or maybe I made a statement that somebody didn't like. Again, I don't know. And they decided to report that to the FBI as some sort of credible threat or act of violence. I really don't know. Like I said, I don't know. And I have not had follow-up since. Weird. Nothing. So I said, well, why you're investigating me? Now, here was the interesting thing. This individual was asking me a lot of questions about me and a lot of questions about my organization that aren't just readily available.
Yeah.
That's what was strange to me. This is a person who knew a lot about me, a lot about my history, and a lot about my organization. And it sounds like based on what had happened, that somebody had made this report and that this individual at some point may have started walking back some of their comments based on what they had initially said. And that this FBI agent was just trying to do a thorough investigation and figure out what in the world is the source of this threat or this report or this whatever it was.
Yeah.
So nothing ever came of it. And I said, what do I need to do? Because look, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I appreciate law enforcement. I do. I think that this country does have to have law and order. Nothing can work if we don't have law and order. And so I want to do right. I want to make sure that I'm following the rules, but I'm also exercising my right to speech and bear arms and these other things that I have a right to and are protected by the Constitution. It was just very frustrating knowing how much they knew about me and the fact that but here was an interesting thing about it. We had a phone call and I answered questions over the phone. There was never any face-to-face interview or conversation. So why did you come to my house? Why did you come to my house when I was away?
Why not?
If your follow-up questions were just done over the phone. There's just a lot of
it's awkward
dots that aren't connected, and the timing of having a new presidency and me being outspoken against that, and the fact that I'm talking a lot about masculinity and manliness, and also the fact that I am rallying men around a cause, not a political cause by any means, but a cause to become better leaders, to serve their families, to serve their communities, to make themselves more capable in every way possible. And I'm wondering if I got lumped in with, the Proud Boys or this QAnon people, or there's not, what's the other one? 4chan or what, I don't know what all the groups are, because I just don't really, maybe I should pay more attention, but I don't. And I'm wondering if I got lumped into that. Somebody made what they believe was a reputable allegation or claim against a person within my organization. Actually, it was probably you. It was you, wasn't it?
Well, I actually know where this is coming from, because you said a threat. And then I immediately went like, yeah, of course, because the jiu-jitsu that we cover at Legacy and main events is a threat to society because we're badass and we're fully capable men.
It's not, but here's the thing. It's not a threat. And I know you're joking, but you're actually not totally wrong, but it's not a threat to society. It's a threat to the individuals who want to control society. That's the problem, is that when we talk about men being responsible and being sovereign and being individuals and leading their families well and having their financial house in order, that's not a threat to society. That's a value add to society. The threat is that society becomes less controllable by the powers that be. That's the issue that they're dealing with. So anyways, nothing ever came of it. And I honestly, I hate to say this, but I got to be really frank and forward with you guys on this. Is like, I didn't say anything about it initially because, again, I've got my business, I've got my family, I've got things, and I wish that I would have said something earlier, but I didn't. And now I need to actually start talking about it and make right for that and not sharing that, because I do have a right to share that story. I do have the right to speak what's on my mind and experiences and things that have happened to me. So anyways, that's where it was coming from. Very awkward, very strange, very scary for my wife. Not scary. I asked if she was scared. She was pissed. She was like me, very pissed, very upset about what was going on and how it went down and the conversation that was being had. So a lot of gaps. I wish I could tell you more, but it is what it is.
I'd be freaked out a little bit.
Well, I was initially. I'm not now, because there's nothing, and there wasn't then, but there's nothing to be freaked out about. But still, when the FBI comes knocking on your door, that's a thing you don't ever think you'd have to experience.
Yeah, for sure.
There you go. There's the story.
There you go. There's the story.
I know a lot of
And
these guys are like, well, I wanted to be better. I wanted them to come in and bust your house down and take your guns away and haul you off and steal your computer. I'm like, sorry to disappoint. Like, I don't want that to happen. And I'm sorry to disappoint you guys that that's not actually what went down.
Well, they came into their front door. They sat down in the living room and Ryan left his blue belt laying over the couch.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden, like, he noticed their eye contact made their eyes made contact with the blue belt. And eventually, like, they just stopped asking questions. And they're like, hey, you know what, sir? We obviously got the wrong person.
That's right.
Have a great day. Sorry for the inconvenience. See ya.
They looked at the blue belt and they looked back over to me very slowly. And as they looked at me, I was just nodding yes, up and down with a menacing look. And it was over. And then they saw my sling. I had my sling draped over the couch. I didn't have it on at the time. And they said, oh, you have a sling? Did you have surgery? I said, that sling's not for me. All right. Enough of that. Let's move on.
That's good.
Let's get to some questions.
That's pretty good. I'm assuming you binge watched Terminal List.
I did. I watched it like in 3 or 4 nights. Very good. Very good series. Very
good. So good.
It was good to see Jack make a little cameo, a 4-time podcast guest, and just, you know what? Here's the thing about Jack you guys got to know that some of you don't. I've had the opportunity to spend some time with him and break bread with him. And the very first time I met Jack, I asked if he would come on the podcast, and I told him I'd be in his area in Utah. And he said, yeah, why don't you come on over? And I met his wife, came to his house. We recorded at his house. And right as I left, he said, hey, hold on. I got something for you. And I started leaving, and he came out and he went into his garage, and he came back with a bunch of elk meat. And he's like, hey, could you guys use this? Do you want this? I said, absolutely. It's elk meat. Of course. Yes. And he gave us some meat. And there's something special about the hunt community because we all share, because that's what you do. But then there's something special about somebody who's like, hey, have some of my family's food. His daughter and him shot that. It was, I think, if I understand correctly, her first elk. And sharing that says a lot about, I think, somebody. Maybe I'm reading more into it, but
no. Well, and I think we need to provide clarity. It's not just their food. It's food that they hunted, and it changes the meaning of it.
Correct.
When Matt, our neighbor, invites me over of, hey, I'm cooking some elk, that's special, right? It's not like, hey, we went to Costco and we prepped a meal.
I got some ground beef at Costco.
Yeah, no, it's a very meaningful thing for them to share that because of the effort that went into it.
Well, and also it's with hunting, and I actually believe this is true about any community. So if it's hunting, if it's jujitsu, any interest usually has some sort of community built around it. Is the beauty of it is that they're shared experiences. So when Jack tells me about him hunting, I can relate to that. I want to hear about that story. And I'm doing him honor by listening to something that's important to him, and then also learning and gleaning information from what he did, what went well, what didn't go well, so that I can become a better hunter. But this is the same for any community. And it's part of the reason why community is so important. And I also think, to go back to our previous discussion, it's part of the reason why the powers that be don't want us actually congregating around righteous activities. That's why you see a dwindling and a dismissal, frankly, and even attacks against churches, because that's where people go to learn about morality. That's where they go to serve each other. That's where they go to support and lean on each other. And that's where they go to become independent from any other institution or government that wants power over them. It's the same reason
than government.
That's a good point too. I didn't say it. Yes, that is a very good point. It's the other reason why you'll see a continued dismantle of once moral and very powerful communal institutions like the Boy Scouts of America. I started talking about the problems with Boy Scouts about 6 or 7 years ago. The Boy Scouts are done. It's all but dead. This is ridiculous. And you know what? I got mocked. I got ridiculed. I had people say some nasty and vile things to me because of what I was saying about the Boy Scouts, 2, 3, 4 years later, it's all but non-existent now. Oh, well, we're trying to do good. Well, you know what? Once the tree goes bad, the fruit goes bad. It's just a matter of time. And that's what I was saying. But there's a clear and deliberate intention behind dismantling those. If you want to say it's a spiritual battle, I would agree with you. If you don't believe it's a spiritual battle, you can bet your butt that it's a temporal one, because the government doesn't want you to be strong. It doesn't want you to be capable, and it doesn't want you to be moral, because you won't depend on the government if that's the case, and they cannot pull on your strings. The government really doesn't
control.
Correct. The government doesn't really want you educated. It wants you to learn how to be a cog in the wheel, which is why you see so much of this permeated through public schooling and also through higher level academia. It doesn't want you to be independent. It's the same thing in the medical community. And I hate to say this, but it really is the same thing in the medical community. I just saw some reports with big pharma. They've known for years and years, if not decades, about I'll say this, they've made some of these drugs for mental illness more than they really are. And they've even shown studies that some of the other, like a placebo, a sugar pill, basically works 85% as effective as some of these highly potent, powerful, brain altering chemical drugs. Okay. If you're telling me that the medical, and that's big pharma, I know, but it's also peddled by psychiatrists, medical doctors. If you're telling me they don't want you fat, broke, miserable, diseased, ill, and sedated, think about what they're doing with our young men, pumping them full of Adderall and Ritalin. And then we see some school shootings. We see things like this. We see the rise of fatherless homes. Every institution at its highest level is working to undermine and dismantle and diminish the nuclear family. That's by design. We have to understand and acknowledge that that is by design. I think it's a spiritual and temporal battle, but even if you believe it's just a temporal one, it's just as bad, and it leads to the same place. So we better start waking up against what's happening in education, in government, in the medical communities. It's a very scary time, but it's also a pivotal moment where we can decide to wake up and step up, or stay sedated and be squashed.
Yeah. And a great way to wake up is to, like you mentioned earlier, is join a community of like-minded individuals in which we're fielding the questions from our Facebook group today. So if you haven't joined us there, join us and get connected with like-minded people. It was so great. Like even just last week, Bubba Downs was traveling through town, and how nice was it for Bubba to go, hey, in town, called up Clint, grabbed dinner, edified through a great conversation. Why? Because we're aligned in purpose, right. In something greater than ourselves, and rising up, and how refreshing that is to be around those kind of guys versus guys that just happen to be your wife's friend's husband, or just random dude from high school that played sports with, that is a punk and you don't even care about. So, geez, like, let's be a little bit more selective in regards to the people that we hang out with. So to join us there, that's facebook.com/group/order of man.
It is interesting, Kip, that most of the friendships you see with not just men, I think this applies to women as well, just happen to be by proximity, by default.
Yeah.
It's your buddy from high school because you live next door to him and you were in a bunch of the same classes, or you played football with him. It's your next door neighbor because he smells you when you're having barbecue and he invited you over for one, and now you feel like you have to invite him over for one. It's the guy that sits next to you in the cubicle and you're both miserable at your job, and so you talk about how miserable you are together. Now you're miserable together, as if that's better. It's worse, actually. Yeah. That's how most guys go about it. Yet then you look at every facet of their life, whether they're doing it or not, they all know they should have clearly defined goals and objectives. Again, whether they're doing it or not, every man knows that if I want to get in shape, I have to have a clear goal and a strategy for making it happen. if I want to start a business or get a promotion or make more money or get out of debt, then I have to have a clear goal and a strategy for making that happen. We understand that in every context of our lives, except relationships. We just don't do it in relationships. And if we do, or we think, or somebody teaches us how to do it, our knee-jerk reaction is, well, this is manipulative. I'm just gaming this. I'm trying to build, and you're telling me I should have a system or I should have a process. And yes, that's what I'm telling you. And if you can be more deliberate and intentional about the relationships that you have, just like your food plan and your meal prep, the better results you're going to experience. So don't, and by the way, your next door neighbor might actually be one of those guys that you want to have, but you better figure it out. You better put it through a litmus test and really find out if that's the guy you want in your corner and if he wants you in his corner.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, Ryan, but as I get older, I realize I only have so much energy. And so and don't get me wrong, it's like if I have a neighbor that doesn't make the cut, it's not like I'm a jerk to them. It's not like I disown them or whatever, but I got to be intentional in regards to where I spend my time. And it's not a discredit to them, or it's not like they're not valuable human beings. It's just, if I'm going to be intentional with my energy and my time, I should be spending it with individuals that meet the cut.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. You need to be deliberate, intentional. I'm going to share Friday field notes this week, so you guys please listen because it's important. I feel like over the past 60 days or so, roughly, I've fallen off a little bit, like physically, mentally fallen behind. I'm going to explain why that is on Friday. But I also have been getting on track over the past several weeks. And I have a list of reasons. I've been documenting them all. I've got them all written right here because I want to share them with you. And one of the things that I've written down is just being more protective of my time and knowing that if something doesn't align with my goals and ambitions professionally and personally, it's a no. It's just a no. It's got to be a no. Because I felt like what was happening is because of the success of Order of Man and other facets of my life, there was so many opportunities and all these bright, shiny objects, and everything was so busy, and I just became consumed. And rather than dealing with it, I withdrew and I retreated and I shut it out. So I'd go through the motions, but I actually wasn't being deliberate and intentional about it. And it really hasn't been until these last several weeks where I've realized, okay, that's the problem, is that rather than addressing it correctly, I disengaged and I retreated because I was so overwhelmed. Man, you don't have to do that. You can do what you want to do. You just can't do everything. And this goes to what you were saying about time. I can't give everybody the same amount of time that I would like to. Kip, I'd love to get on the phone with everybody who listens to this podcast and have an hour-long conversation every Tuesday like you and I do. I would love to be able to do that. And I actually tried to do things like that because I thought that was the right thing to do. And then I realized I'm going crazy. Yeah. I'm going crazy and I'm not being productive. I'm not being effective. I'm withdrawing from situations. And I'm failing myself and my family and my business and you who are listening. So I've got to say no. I can't spend all my time with and for other people. And I have to be more selective in how I do this.
When you say withdrawing, are you, maybe said another way, just not being fully present? So giving
Correct.
100% to that in which you're committed to, because you've said yes to too many things. So now everything's a little maybe half-assed, or you're just not giving your all, and then the quality is being affected.
Yeah, things would fall through the cracks. I was dropping the ball. I was letting people down. Then I was feeling guilty because I couldn't give everybody all the attention I wanted to, or all the projects I wanted to attention. And then I wasn't getting them done. So now I feel doubly guilty because now I'm not even following through on my commitments. And now have confidence issues because I'm not doing
out of integrity
what needs to be done. That integrity gap that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, it's a brutal cycle, and it really doesn't stop until you realize that you're in the cycle and that you put your foot down and you prioritize and realize what you're going to say yes to and what you're going to say no to. I had 3 people email me today well, over the weekend. I was getting them to him today because I don't check emails on the weekend. That's a thing. I've got to put those things in place. So I was looking at my emails this morning and I had 3 podcast requests. Normally I would have said, yeah, let me see. Let me look at my calendar. Okay. Wednesday at 4:30. Yeah. Tuesday at 2. Okay. I could do, and I would sneak them in. And then I was pissed at everybody. I was bugged that I was going on this podcast. So I let that person down. I was bugged at myself because I got a boatload of other work to do. And I'm here on this podcast I don't want to be on. I was pissed that my family wanted me to come to the lake because I was like, well, I'd love to come to the lake. Wouldn't that be nice? But I got to do this podcast. So it's like, it's horrible. So I had 3 this morning and I wrote all of them back. And I simply said, I appreciate the invite. What you're doing sounds incredible, but I've made the decision at this stage not to do podcasts. That might change down the road, but the answer is no. But I wish you the best and I appreciate the invite. All the best to you. Oh my gosh, Kip, like a weight has been lifted off of my shoulders because I'm saying no. All right, questions.
I hope on Friday you go into how do you deal with, first off, I can't relate to the whole FOMO thing. It's not a thing for me, but it is hard to pass up opportunities. And I don't know, it's just hard to pass up opportunities where there's this chance to maybe grow in a different area or to contribute. And how do you get to a point where you can have confidence around your saying no? I mean, and maybe it's just saying no and how you feel about it. But for me, I think by saying no, sometimes I then second guess that no and go, man, maybe should I have? And then it still kind of drags with me a little bit. So I don't know, maybe a request from me, if you dive into that aspect.
I get it. Friday. I understand it. I will say this. Something that really helped me in the past several weeks was I have a close personal friend who I really admire on a lot of different fronts, but professionally is an incredible human being and is building, it's Pete with Origin. He's building something amazing, absolutely amazing. And I see what he's doing and I'm like, man, I got to do that. I got to be like him, not recreate his business, but do what he's doing in my business. I'm like, I want to do this and I'm inspired and I'm motivated by him. And we went to lunch the other day and he said something, he said it in passing, probably doesn't think much of it, but he said, man, I know where you're at, but I want to tell you, there's no way in a million years I'd be able to do what I'm doing if I was in your situation where you are with your family, you've got young kids and everything else. And he says, I look at you and it seems like you figured out a way to walk the never ending change of the line between professional and personal life. He's like, that's awesome. And it was really refreshing to hear somebody that I admire as much as I do say, dude, I couldn't do what you're wanting to do if I was in your shoes. It's like, okay, got it. You're in a different space. And that isn't that what we do? We look at what everybody else does. And it's like, well, I want to have a business like Kip. I want to start a movement like Ryan. I want to run an organization and start a brand new hunt line and be connected with these guys like Pete. I want to have a podcast like Joe Rogan. Like we do these things, but we don't accurately look at the stage or the place they are in life that has got them to that position. And are we willing to trade that? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's so tough though. Right. Because
of course it's tough
because we want to achieve, right. And we want to push forward and we want to kill it. And it's hard not to, want to sacrifice and say yes too many times in an attempt to do that.
Well, Kip, here's the interesting thing. The only way that you can have that where you don't have FOMO, you're not holding yourself to a standard of people that you admire and respect, that you're not aspirational for your own goals and objectives. The only way to have that is for you to be indifferent.
Yeah.
For you to be a slug.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, because sometimes don't we wish, like, I'll tell you, I stay up at night. Last night I was doing it and my wheels are turning like, I can hear the gears in my brain just turning about what do I do and how do I grow this and how do I connect and how do I market and how do I this and how do I that? What's my next thing? Hey, the book, what's after that? That's what happens to my brain. And at night, sometimes I'm like, man, I just want to shut this off. The only way for it to be shut off is to be that slug, to be completely indifferent. And I'm not excited about the prospects of that at all. Yeah. So we take the good with the bad, and we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we realize that the reason we have FOMO, the reason that we're motivated by people, the reason that we put ourselves into competition with others is because we're aspirational, is because we're motivated, is because we're hard chargers. And that's a good thing. We just need to figure out, as high achievers, talking to all of us who are listening, how to rein it in. It's like riding a horse. You know, the first time you get on a wild Mustang, he's going to buck you off and you won't be able to control it. But you finally start to break that horse a little bit and finally get a saddle on that thing and put some reins on that horse. And all of a sudden you got some power with you now, but it's controlled power.
Got it. So all you guys from Sevier County and Parowan, it just all came together once we used the analogy of horse breaking. They're like, that's right. Yeah, got it.
That's right. Horse, cattle,
small town boys,
probably some sheep farmers out there too. Sheep and goat farmers. We'll use better analogies for our Southern Utah brothers.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny you say that. I was thinking about a buddy of mine. I think we went to Iraq together. He wrote a great book. He was actually on the Jocko podcast about a month ago. His name's Braxton McCoy. And he's one of the most manly men that I know. Like when you see him, you're like, yeah, that's the guy. Like that's the picture of a man in the dictionary. And he's just got this awesome mustache and red beard. He looks like a cow. He is a cow. He doesn't look like he is a cowboy. Yeah, I was thinking about him as I was giving that analogy, because I think he would appreciate that. So if you're listening, that was for you, Braxton.
All right. Our first question, Marty, Otto Seneca. I listened to your most recent episode with Miss Trish and would like some more info on the point you made about undermining each other.
That's all it says about undermining each other?
Yeah. So maybe
but it doesn't ask what kind of clarification. Okay, well, let me see what I can do. So I think what he's referring to, if I remember correctly, is that when we have a way of approaching our children, it's usually our children, or it could be anybody else. It's a third party.
Yeah. But alignment. Yeah.
Right. If we're out of alignment with each other on something and we're talking with a third party, again, friend, family member, colleague, coworker, kids, whatever, we don't undermine each other in front of each other. Yeah. Right. So if my kid came to my wife and said, hey, can I have a snack? Then I don't go and she says no. Then I don't say, hey, hon, it's okay. It's okay. If he has, it's fine. You can have a snack. You don't do that. What you do is when they come to you and they'll pit each other against you, they'll pit you guys against each other. They're so good at manipulation.
It's like built in.
Yeah, they're so good at it. And so then little Timmy or Tommy will come to you. Hey, Dad, can I have a snack? What did Mom just say? That's the correct answer. Or even better, no. Not what did Mom say? Because that's kind of a subservient position.
Yeah.
Like, and I would like you to, but it's on Mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the best answer is, no, Mom and I have told you that there's no snacks an hour before dinner. You know that, so don't even ask. Right. I know that's a silly, small example, but that's the point that we're making. And then what we do is we talk afterwards. So I go back to my wife and I say, hey, hon, if we're outside and we're all hanging out and it's, 2 or 3 hours before dinner and the kids want to have an ice cream, like, I don't see any problem with that, but it sounds like maybe you have an issue with that. Oh, no, I only took issue with it because an hour earlier they had an ice cream. Right? But I didn't know that. Totally. So you don't undermine in front of each other. You are a unified front. And then grievances and problems are taken care of behind the scenes so that you can get on the same page and realize where each other are coming from.
I got a good example of this that's a little bit more complex and you can see certain angles. So we have some lake property. I have two, I call them teenage boys. Unfortunately, they're more boys than men, but 20 and 18. And they ask Mom, hey, Mom, can we go down to the property and take the jet skis out and kind of chill out down there? and she makes arrangements and, not arrangements, but set some expectations in regards to if that's allowed or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And she gives them, those expectations and clarity around what's acceptable and not acceptable. She gives me an update and I disagree with some of the expectations. Now, at first, her tendency was like, well, fine. Like, why don't you just tell the boys opposite then, right? Like call them up and go, hey, it's not happening, because now that's me undermining her, right? Let me swoop in and destroy what mom said, undermine her and lay down the hammer.
And then you're the dick.
Yeah. And then I'm the dick. Or the flip side is, so that's one way that I could undermine, or there could be undermining. The other way there could be is then we talk, get proper alignment, and then she reaches out to them and goes, oh, talk to your dad, and nope, you can't do that. And now she just undermined me.
Right.
Because of our disagreement. And so it's really unified front is really what I think about. You can have disagreement, you can see things differently, but that unified front is so critical. And even a silly thing like, hey, Ian, you want to be able to go? I'm okay with it, but ask your mom. There's a little bit of undermining even in that statement.
There is.
Where it's like, hey, I'm cool, I'm on your side. Mom might be the asshole though, so ask her. I mean, literally, like those are the things that we want to be very careful about. And it's like, hey, let me think about it. Let me talk to mom, make sure that we're in alignment, and I'll get back to you. There's a really proper way to honoring her and honoring your relationship, even in those small instances.
And this is the reason why it's so important to have constant communication with your wife. Now, you might say to me, well, Ryan, my wife and I talk all the time. Like when we talk at night at dinner and we talk about like the kid's day. And like, if she has a question about something or we need help, if she needs help with a budget or I do, we talk. It's like, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm not talking about the day-to-day minutia bullshit that, yes, you should definitely talk about that stuff. I'm talking about deliberate and intentional carved out time for more serious family issues. So that when there is a request like this and she says, hey, hon, the boys wanted to go and I told them, and now I'm kind of thinking about it and I probably shouldn't have, what should we do next time? Or what do you think about that? Right. But you can't do that if you don't have time carved out in the day for it, because your day is already maxed out. So you've got to carve out time to do that, to communicate. There's another problem, actually. If you're not doing that, if you don't have effective communication with her, there's a problem here with your scenario. Let's say she came to you and said, hey, I think it's okay if the boys go. Here's the conditions I gave them. And you're like, well, no, here's the other conditions. Here's the risk you could run. Now you're a bully to your wife.
Yeah.
And she sees that, or at least she experiences it, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. Well, how come I don't get a say? It's always Kip's way. Does he think he just runs everything? And
yeah,
based on my belief, right. I'll say it like this, based on my belief, you are the patriarch of the home. So yes, in a way, what I say goes. Like, that's the dynamic of our home. I think that's the proper way to set up a family structure. But that's not to say that I'm dismissive of my wife's perspective and opinion and feedback and concern. I care about those things, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page. So I better communicate to her why it's so important that we do it this way. Or, you know what? Here's something you could do. Try this. Your wife makes a decision and she makes a good decision. Instead of going in and saying, well, I would do this and that, and just say, oh, that was awesome. And I agree with all of that. That was so great. Period. Yeah. You don't need to beat her up if there's nothing to beat her up about, but some of us will. I've done it. We're all guilty of it.
Totally. Well, even in my circumstance, in retrospect, I'm looking at the circumstance and it was a bitch session, right? It was like, oh man, well, how about these things and blah, blah, blah. Well, what are you suggesting? Like, what am I suggesting if not undermine her and recommunicate and crush the plans and the expectations that were already set? However, if I communicated in a way of, hey, here's some concern for next time, something to consider for next time, because my concern is blah, blah, blah. Knowing that it's already been communicated, I don't want to undermine what we've done. I don't want to, you know what I mean, disrupt what was already communicated and agreed upon. But next time they go, maybe a few things to consider, because here's my concerns.
Yeah. Effective communication goes a long ways. All right, what else we got?
All right, Rudy Vanderviver, I promise that's the name. What is the best way we can create a space of open communication with either our family, wife, business, friends, and etc.? How do you help those that struggle with communication be more open to discussion and ideas to help solve situations, come to resolutions, and or make plans to create better outcomes?
I feel like we've answered this question in a lot of ways. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to give you something different that I'm not sure I've really ever harped on. And it's very, very important. Because yeah, you can carve out time and you can tell her you want to talk. You can do all those things. And you know those things.
Yeah. The tactics of it. Yeah.
Yes. Here's what you need to know. The way that you respond when somebody does something that you want them to do is going to determine whether or not they do it again or do something different.
Totally.
So let's say your wife comes to you and she's like, after dinner, we put the kids down, we go to bed, and after dinner, she's like, today was such a long day. Like one of the kids threw up and the other one got in a fight at school. And then little Timmy got a D on his report card, and man, it was just hard. And then my mom called and she's struggling and she misses us. And like she just unloads on you. And you're like, hun, just, I can't, I'm busy. Like it's been a long day at work for me too. And I can't. I don't care about little Timmy's poopy diaper. I don't care about what your mom's upset about. Okay. I just can't do this right now. And then 2 days later, you go to her and you're like, hon, I'd really like to work on our communication. Yeah. I'd like to carve out time for communication. What's going on? Nothing. Well, how come you never talk to me? Yeah. It's funny because we know what it's like because we've all done it. Totally. So the answer to creating and fostering an environment of effective communication is when somebody actually communicates with you, you handle it in a positive way. So when your wife says, hey, little Timmy had a crappy diaper and then he puked and this person, this and that, and you're like, I really don't want to hear about this. You don't say that. You say, oh man, that does sound like a tough day. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do to help? No, I just wanted to let you know. Thank you. It's important. Your day is important to me. That must be hard. I don't know how you do it because I would go nuts in that situation. Man, she's going to share it with you next time, right? She's going to open up.
Yeah.
And also when you want to talk with her about something she doesn't want to hear about, there's all sorts of things. I talk to my wife about jujitsu. Sometimes I'm like, hey, let me show you this move I learned. And so we go in the front room. She doesn't want to do that. She doesn't care, or even about my business. Hey, hon, this is cool. And like, check out this technology. She cares because she knows I care about the things. And sometimes I make sacrifices. And so she's going to do the same. That's the only way, is the way that you behave in moments of communication will dictate how people will communicate with you moving forward.
I think for so much of this has to do with just us having our stuff together, like having our shit together, right? Because the time that it's hardest to listen to is when we're feeling sorry for ourselves, when I want to be heard, I don't want to help, I'm too busy, or I'm running my own story. So I'm incapable of emotionally caring for another because I want that to be done for me, you know, and it's just, right. Really stresses the importance of just getting your stuff together so we can be in a position to serve better and not be reactionary to what occurs.
One of the things that I'm really good at is when my wife has a grievance of some sort and vocalizes that to me, I'm really good at making it her fault. I'm not saying that as a redeeming quality, guys.
Yeah.
But I acknowledge that about myself. She's like, hey, you've been this and this and this. Well, the reason is because the house is messy. Or the reason is because the kids are just they don't even know when to come in. You can't even keep control of them during the day.
Yeah.
That's something I personally need to work on, is just saying, oh, you know what? Yeah, I can see that. I need to come up with some systems for boundaries in the office or taking care of the space or something, but I know there's a different way to handle that. I just want to acknowledge that, because I'm not telling you guys this because I have it figured out. I'm actually going to go back and listen and be like, oh yeah, it's a good idea. I didn't need to do that.
Yeah. All these scenarios are just running through my head of like, oh yeah, I don't handle that very well. Mine is way more critical. I will complain about how she's communicating. So I'm open to but oh honey, the way you should say that is this way, right?
Oh, that's gotta be lovely.
Yeah. You're like, it's not always, that's not true. What you should say is, I feel like, not I am, I'm like, which does not help the case at all whatsoever.
No. Yeah. The best thing to do is tell her to calm down. That's always the best option.
Yeah.
One more thing that
you need to go for a walk. You need to go for a walk
and calm down.
You're too emotional. Yeah.
Another thing that I do, I think it's important we acknowledge how crappy we are at this, is I have a really short temper. And I have even more so because, again, this stems from what I was telling you guys about earlier.
Stress too much, taking on too much. Yeah.
So rather than go from 0 to 1 or 2 and deal with something that needs to be dealt with, I go from 0 to 10. And then I'm actually pretty good, and I'm saying this with sincerity, I am pretty good at recognizing where I went wrong quickly and then trying to fix it. I'm actually pretty good at that. So one thing I'll do is I'll go from 0 to 10 and blow up and piss everybody off and make everybody mad and rile them all up. And then I'll go to my wife and I'll say, hey, you know what? I handled that situation wrong. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Which is appropriate.
Are you pulling that off
within a 20, definitely a 24-hour window, usually even just several hours like that. It's usually just like a couple hours. I'm like, oh crap. Yep. There you go. Dummy. You did it again, and then you have to go fix it. And so here's what, because that's my personality of like 0 to 100 and then 100 back down to 0 very quickly. Yeah. Because I do that, when I go to my wife and I say, hey, you know what? I handled that incorrectly. I yelled at you. I yelled at the kids. I made everybody feel bad. I'm really sorry about that. She doesn't immediately forgive me. And I'm like, what's your problem?
And then you're back up to 100.
I said, sorry. And now you're going to be short with me all day. Like, where are you? These are things I need to work on. Like you guys are laughing. I know you are, because y'all do the same thing. We're all the same. We're a little bit different, but we're all the same. These are things all of us can work on.
Yeah. You're 24 hours. I'm about 24 days is kind of what I'm working on.
Really?
No, not that bad, but I have a hard time because once again, it's busy and I'll be like, all right, I need to have that communication. But by then it's 9, it's 10. I'm like, I want to go to bed. I don't want to do this before we go to bed because it gets drawn out and then it will be up late and I'll blow it off.
Yeah.
Out of convenience. That's my
I know
I should have those conversations. I don't have them as fast as I should.
Yeah. Yeah. My personality tends to be, just by nature, I'm a bit of a worrier. And so when things are wrong, I worry about them and I try to fix them like fast because I want to get it resolved, whether it's a business thing or a relationship thing or whatever. I'm like, hey, that was an issue. That was a problem. Now I want to resolve it fast so I can drive on. I can get past it and move on with it. I know that about my personality is just, I worry and I fret over those things. And so I want to bring it up. Like, I don't want to dwell on something longer than it needs to be dwelt upon, if that's the right way to say it.
Yeah.
And I just want to fix it so then we can put it behind us and then move on. And I know we'll never move on. At least I won't, because I'm a worrier. I'll never move on until I check this thing off the box.
Yeah. And that makes sense why you're kind of like, Trish, I resolved it. Let's move on,
go.
Right? Like,
let's be happy now.
Don't keep this on my plate because I wanted to get it off. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. I guess the point,
All right,
another point here, guys, is to know yourself too. Like know how you respond, know where you step in it, know how you are good at resolving things. Because being a worrier and wanting to resolve things, that's not a bad trait. But if it conflicts with how somebody else might approach it, then it becomes not something positive. So know yourself. All right, what else we got?
Jacob Pinion. I go to a men's ministry Saturday mornings. That is exactly how you've described church men's groups, feminized. Since I found Order of Man, you've helped me change my mentality. And I find more often than not, I'm disappointed with men's ministries. What would be your approach to a men's group that isn't checking your boxes?
Well, I think we first have an obligation to try to fix our situation in our environment. So a lot of times people will just withdraw immediately.
Yeah.
Like, I'm out. Man, what if you could have been the guy all of those people needed? Not only that, it represents a tremendous opportunity for you to make something of yourself, right? Like, think about at work. You see a problem at work and you're like, they don't pay me for this, I'm out of here. Okay, that's what most men would do. They don't pay me enough for this bullshit, I'm out. Well, what if you just waited a second and try to figure out what the problem is? And then you went to your boss and you're like, hey, boss, the company I was with before actually had this exact same deal. And I shared with them a 10-point plan on how to resolve it. And within 60 days, we were getting more money. We were selling bigger contracts. Receivables went, I don't even know if they're called receivables or collection or whatever, went down. And I would love to share that plan with you if you're interested. And maybe your boss says, oh, no, we're good. Okay, well, no, you tried, That's what men do. We try to make ourselves a resource and a value add to the environment. Or he might say, actually, I am pretty interested in that. And even better, he might say, well, hey, Ryan, seems like it worked. Would you be interested in implementing that? Now, I can't give you a raise. I can't give you a promotion or anything like that. But man, would you be willing to head that up? Like, why do we say no? I know why we do. They don't pay me. That's not my job description. Oh, if you want me to do it, you got to pay me more. Well, why don't you figure it out? And maybe you actually fixing the problem, a boss thinks, whoa, Ryan just solved that problem in 6 months. We've been dealing with that for 6 years. Maybe I ought to look at this guy a little bit closer. Now, maybe you do it and nothing ever comes of it. And that happens over and over again. And at some point, yes, you're being abused. Yes.
Yeah.
But at least give yourself a fighting chance. Okay, so now to go back to church. Same thing. Let's say you love your church congregation, your pastor, your preacher, your whoever is a phenomenal human being. You love their sermons. You love what he has to say. He's got balls and you can stand up against crazy cultural things. But the men's group just sucks. Fix it. That's the first thing you do. You don't retreat. The first thing you do is you try to fix it. And here's what I would do. And I've talked about it before. I'd go to whoever heads it up and I'd say, hey, I really like you guys. I would really want to make sure that selfishly that I'm served by being here, but also I think I really want you and the guys to be served. And I think there's some really cool things we did at my previous congregation that would be a lot of fun here. I actually have access to a shooting range and I would like to invite all the men to the shooting range on Wednesday evening at 6:00. On me, you guys just, if you have a gun, cool. If not, I'll take care of it. Everybody pitch in $20. We'll buy $20 won't buy much ammo anymore, but you know what I'm saying.
Everyone gets a shot.
Yeah. Everyone shoots one shot, shoots once, not as in one turn, just literally one squeeze of the trigger. But you set it up and then they get there and you're like, hey, you talk to the guy in charge. If you're in charge, Kip, I'd say, Kip, here's what I'm thinking for the evening, but I'm going to defer to you. You just let me know. I would like to, when we get to the range, I would like to open it with a prayer because I think it's important that we pray. This is a spiritual congregation. And then I would like to share a scripture reference on the importance of being able to defend yourself and take care of the people that you love. And then we'll shoot and then I'll just close it out with a prayer at the end of the evening. Is that cool with you? He's going to love that. He doesn't have to do anything. You make him look like a rock star. You play to his vanity, which he's in charge. And by the way, when you give the prayer, you say, hey, I just want to first and foremost thank Kip for helping me organize this and getting you guys. I'm telling you, we think it's true. It's like, well, he shouldn't be like, this is church. Well, he is. So get over it. Hey, I just want to thank Kip. I don't know if you guys know how much Kip cares about you guys. Like, he genuinely loves you guys. He wants to serve. He wants you to win. And he was gracious enough to take out one of your guys' activities. And I wanted to share something with you that I love and that I think would be valuable for all of us. So first and foremost, Kip, thank you for doing this. Let's open it up with a prayer.
Yeah,
man, that's how you do it. You go and you do activities men want to do, but you have to have a spiritual undertone, which is the prayer and the scripture that ties into the message. But go to jujitsu, go train, go serve, go run a marathon, go to the shooting range, do a golf outing. Do a barbecue. Hey guys, family barbecue tonight, and have like a chili cook-off. All the guys in the congregation, you make your best chili, and we're going to have a blind taste test, and we're going to dub the winner, the best chili in this congregation. It's not hard stuff. You just have to assert yourself and go out of your way. And I'm telling you with 100% certainty, the guy who's leading your men's group in your church right now, with 100% certainty, if you do it the way we're telling you to do it, will be ecstatic about what you're doing. He's not going to reject that. If he does, I would take some issue with the congregation, because that's a sign of maybe some disease within the group.
Yeah. Listening to you, I think I started contemplating, what is it that we get hung up on? And I think there's huge power in getting clarity and commitment to the strategic outcome or the desired outcome and intent, so you can connect with it and realize, okay, wait, this brother that's running this men's group, ultimately, what is he trying to achieve? We're trying to bring these guys together. We're trying to create strong community so we can uplift each other. Awesome. Like, I can get behind that. Now, once I'm connected to that, I can go, okay, well, Ryan is just going about it maybe a little different and wrong. And now my judgment on you as an individual and how it's being approached kind of goes out the window a little bit. And I think that, okay, it's just not effective. But I understand that you and I are both aligned with what we're trying to accomplish. And then it's easier to emotionally get behind different approaches and strategies to ultimately reach that outcome. Far too often, I think we get wrapped up in the how, and it's like, oh, they're wrong. Guess what? You're probably both fully aligned with the desired outcome. How you're getting there is the only difference. And that kind of gives us I don't know what I'm looking for, like the discipline and the motivation to stay committed to the cause of change versus just bailing.
Yeah. It's a great point. I love it. Well, Kip, why don't we take one more and then we'll wrap things up for the day?
Okay. Sounds good. Well, geez, let me find a good one really quick, because we have 3 more. We probably talked a little. I was worried that we wouldn't have enough questions today.
Well, we talked about a lot of other things. I've just got a busy day. I've got, I'm going to be doing more reading of my book today. So you guys need to know that when the book, The Masculinity Manifesto, comes out, it will be available on Audible as well. And then I've got an electrician who just got here. I need to go talk with him in about 10 minutes because he's wiring the big, huge industrial fans in the barn to cool us off in there. So exciting times.
So we don't slide off the 3rd floor.
Yeah. Actually, the fans will be below the 3rd deck. So I'll have to buy 2
so you get chopped.
Yeah. So it drops you into the hole and you got to shoot the gap without getting diced. No, then we'll buy 2 more and we'll put them up on the top deck. It's going to be amazing.
All right. Jay Denmark, his questions around just toxic people. What is the best way to deal with toxic people? How to tell the difference between someone joking and being disrespectful? Where's that line? I always see negativity towards others, especially my coworkers, picking on one of my younger coworkers who is 18. I'm not sure whether to step in and say something or try to lead by influence. I'm just not sure.
No, I think I would step in and say something. Because Kip, let's say you're being that person to the 18-year-old. When appropriate, I probably wouldn't tell a boss this because it's not really your appropriate place to do that. But I would befriend the 18-year-old in that case. I'd be like, hey man, like, I know sometimes it can be challenging. It's all new stuff. And there's a lot of guys here, a lot of whatever going around. Like, don't talk about your boss, by the way. Don't do that. But hey, look, I know how hard it is. It's a stressful environment. I get it. So befriend that person. But if you're in the position, I'd say, hey, Kip, man, quietly, privately, hey, Kip, can I share something with you? Yeah. Hey, I think you're joking. Because I know you, we've got a good friendship, and you kind of have a sarcastic personality. But Bill, you get on him, and I don't think you know how it affects him, because he's actually having a hard time working here because he's not reading your sarcasm as sarcasm. He thinks you're being a jerk. I don't think you are. I think you mean well. I think the reason you joke with him is because he's part of the team, and that's what we do as men, right? But I just do with it what you want. I just wanted to bring it to your attention because I want to have a good work environment, and I know you do too. And we want to make this guy feel welcome because he's a kick-ass employee. So just something to be aware of. And that's a great non-threatening way just to bring it up the first time.
Totally.
So I don't think sarcastic people are, I really don't think they're generally assholes. I think that they probably not all sarcastic people, but a lot of them lack some confidence, and there might be some integrity issues there, and they hide it by being snarky and sarcastic. And I don't even think subconsciously they're trying to elevate themselves above people. I think they're trying to elevate themselves against who they know they are. Like, they're not trying to prove that they're better than you. They're trying to prove that they're better than they actually are themselves. And the way to do it is by making snarky comments that could be misinterpreted very easily as being rude or negative. But if you do that, and then in addition befriend the 18-year-old, even if that doesn't work out in that environment, that's manly to me. That's befriending the kid and then talking with the peer. That's just the right, when you say, hey, don't worry about all this. Well, like Marcus Aurelius, waste no more time arguing what a man should do or will be one. That's what a man is. That's what a man would do.
The secret sauce that you said that I think is profound is you didn't say you are being this way, or it seems as though, or you might consider. That way it allowed the boss to come to that conclusion on your own, and you're just sharing what you're seeing and sharing it as not as a judgment, but just an awareness or a thought that you might have. And that's non-threatening. You take that same exact conversation and said, hey, want to give you a heads up. When you joke around with Tommy, dude, you're being a complete ass. And he's pissed off when you treat him that way. One, that's not even true. That's your interpretation of it anyway. And he's going to take that from and be highly defensive towards that type of statement versus you just sharing what you're observing.
Well, think about each of those little role plays that we did. When you go and talk with Tommy, you're like, hey, man, I know it can be a rough environment. I work here too. I know it can be challenging. It's very stressful, but I just want you to know you're doing a great job. I really appreciate working with you. What are you doing? You're putting yourself on the same team. Now you're on his team.
Yeah.
That's what you want with other people. We're on the same team. Hey, man, we're on the same team. Then when you go to the peer or whoever and you say, hey, I don't know if you understand. Like, I know you want a great work environment. So do I. Like, we all want to be here and work in a great environment. And I don't know if you know, but sometimes Tommy interprets that as negativity. I don't think you're being that way. I just think it's easy for him to read it that way. But man, like you, I want to create a winning environment too. What did I just do? We're on the same team. You're on my team. I'm on your team. Just like if I was on a football team and I'd be like, hey, Kip, man, I've noticed that that one particular play, that block seems to be a challenge. It's hard for you to hit that block, but it's crucial because we want the team to win. Am I missing something? Like, is there some confusion about it? Or, what? I would say that to a teammate on a football field because I want to win. And so does he, by the way. Even the guy that's missing the block wants to win. Of course he does.
Yeah.
You got to put yourself on the same team. But what was the first part of that question?
Best way to deal with toxic people.
Toxic people.
Yeah. Difference between joking and being disrespectful.
So this goes back to what I was saying about from me going from 0 to 10. Like, don't go from 0 to this person's a toxic, horrible human being. Just escalate it. So, okay, let's just say, hey, so 0 is he's a decent person, right? Like, everybody starts at 0 in my book. You're all at 0. You're all decent people, unless you prove otherwise, and then you start getting into the negatives. And then if you do above and beyond, I think you're exceptional, not just decent. Now you're exceptional. So everybody starts at decent with me. Okay. And then if you prove some things, I don't go from decent to a freaking asshole. I go from decent to he's not a great communicator. Still decent. He's just not a great communicator. Then I might go from decent to not a great communicator to, man, that guy's probably really hurting. He's probably got some baggage. Like he probably, well, either I think one of two things. He either was abused as a kid or was dropped on his head as a kid. But not I don't think he's a horrible human being yet. And I just work up that chain and then I address it as appropriate based on where he is on that tier. And at some point, yeah, you're going to hit asshole status and we're going to have an asshole reaction. But everything else has to have had happened prior to that event. And I don't even think you'll get to that event. I think either the behavior will change or you'll leave, which is also appropriate. If you're in that environment and everybody's at this 10 up here, if you've done, like we talked about on the previous question, if you've done everything you can as a man and you've tried to affect change and it's not happening, you probably ought to remove yourself from the environment. Which is why it's so important to do the other things that we talk about, which is to make yourself valuable, to get yourself financially free, to get yourself sovereign, to learn how to network really well. So if you ever find yourself in one of those environments, you have what I call a walk away fund, or some people call an FU fund, where if I was ever in that situation and Kip, you were a real jerk, I could say, hey, thanks, I'm out of here. Well, when's your last day? Yesterday. Because we've had these conversations over and over and over again, and I'm not going to be here and be treated this way and work in this kind of environment. I wish you the best. I hope something changes, but I'm out. And there's nothing you can hold over my head to say, well, you're not going to get your paycheck next week. That's okay. I'm trying not to get all hyped up here. That's okay. I got $500,000 in the bank. I don't need, it would be nice. I don't need the $4,000 paycheck you owe me. I'm going to be okay. And $4,000 ain't worth my self-respect. Bye. But that's way down the line, line. So get everything in order before you get to that point.
I have to say this one thing, because I think people say that they think this all the time. You said, I think we can paraphrase that in the conversation today, that we should look to the opportunity to impact and change and not just be so quick to bail out. And I think when it comes to relationships, that opportunity to have change occur and impact is found in relationship, not the judgment. So if I'm struggling with you, it can't be superficial, right? If I want to cause change in you, I need to establish a relationship. I need to understand you. What makes him tick? Why does he come across so abrasive or aggressive, and literally get to know you. If it's always superficial, I'm never in a position of influence, and thus there's never going to be change. And now it requires some effort, and you'll have to have some balance in regards to how much you need to invest in those relationships. But that change is found in establishing of a relationship, which ultimately will give you empathy and understanding. Judgment is just superficial, and you'll never get to the root of anything. And no one's going to listen to you if you don't have an established relationship of some sort.
They will, as long as you're superior in some way in the hierarchy to them. But that's not a great way to build commitment. I think I talked about it last week. You'll get compliance with people. Like I can get people to comply. I want people to be committed to it. And that requires what you're saying, the relationship.
Totally.
Cool. All right, brother. Cool. Let's wrap it up. Let's call it a day.
Yeah. So, I mean, really call to action is join us. band with us, be part of our community. If you haven't already, join the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Order of Man and connect with Mr. Mickler on the socials, Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler. And as always, you can get your Order of Man swag from the store. That's store.orderofman.com.
Excellent. All right, you guys, great questions. We monopolized a bit of the time early on and didn't get to your questions. So we'll save the few that we didn't get to for next week. Appreciate it all. And we'll catch you on Friday. Remember, I'm doing that Friday field notes about getting off track and ways that I've got back on track. So make sure you're subscribed. All right, guys, we'll see you on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.